Hi, this is Jack Stanley, and I wanted to talk about Adolf Hitler. This is a topic that's very uncomfortable for a lot of people. But what I want to talk about with Adolf Hitler has nothing to do with what he did. We all know what he did. We all know he was a rather unusual individual. Pretty smart, brilliant, I guess we'd have to say. An artist, somewhat failed, but not a bad artist. I've seen his works. Also an avid bowler. That means much. Championship whistler. And of course a dictator. And of course there were a lot of people killed as a direct result of his views, his actions, and his leadership. Now, the thing that I find most interesting about Hitler is how little we paid attention to him. We really paid no attention at all, to a degree. I mean, yes, we looked at it and said, oh, something is going on. But in the United States, we were very much absorbed in isolationism. After the rigors and horrors of World War I, which were terrible, the United States just did not want to deal with the rest of the world. And so we kind of stuck our heads in the sand. I find it kind of interesting. It's a book that came out in 1931. It's called Thunder Over Europe. It's a pretty well unknown book, but it was written by E. Alexander Powell, and what he was saying is, you might not observe what's going on, you might not be thinking what's going on, but something is happening in Europe, and before long, it's going to explode. And what this gentleman did, he looked at all the various countries and talked about all the people in charge, and gave his diagnosis of what was going to happen. It's very interesting because the first person in his book is Hitler. I don't know if that comes in very clearly. And how they refer to him as Mussolini's little brother. To a degree, he was looked upon as a joke, especially in 1931. By 1933, of course, he was chancellor. And of course, he changes the government around totally. From our perspective, from most people's perspective, they were kind of impressed by what he was doing. He straightened out the economy, as far as we could tell, in Germany. Unemployment went down. The economy started to boom. The Autobahn came out. The Volkswagen Beetle, which was from Hitler's design, working with Porsche. In fact, Hitler is nominated twice for a Nobel Peace Prize in 1937. Amazing. Who would have thunk it? But the thing is that Hitler is financed very heavily from the United States. Lots of bankers in New York are financing him. They want to build into the Nazi movement. It's kind of amazing. But one of the things I found so interesting about Hitler is the fact of how little we knew about him. We didn't really understand him too much. We looked at him and said, okay, there he is. He's goose-stepping around doing his thing and rebuilding a nation. And he may become a problem in the future. But what did we know? Hitler had written a book in the 1920s called Mein Kamph. Basically, the translation is My Struggle. What is most fascinating to me is the fact that the book was never published in whole in the United States until 1939. It's pretty incredible. Because when you read the book, I have read it, it's not an easy read, I will tell you that. It gives you his philosophies And they're a little scary. But he didn't hide them. He told them. Here's the first edition, actually, of Mein Kampf in the United States. It's from 1939, as I said. And it shocks me that nobody ever sat and read the whole book. I mean, there were portions of it printed, but not the entire thing. So I have to say that a lot of times we have a tendency not to look at things, not to understand people, and to be perfectly honest, we didn't understand Hitler. I think if we had, in the 1930s, we could have dealt with things in a lot better way. I imagine England and France could have dealt things in a much better way, perhaps. But it was a very dangerous period of time. And it all ended in his bunker in late April 1945. But the carnage that enveloped the world is frightening. So I guess what I can say by this is we should have listened to him a little bit more. And we should have read this. But nobody did. Very few people read it. In Germany, everybody read it. Everybody was pretty impressed with it. It was kind of like, I'll change that. Maybe they weren't impressed with it, but they didn't dare say they weren't. And it became basically everyone got a copy of it. And it was a bestseller. And of course, Hitler made a fortune with it. And of course, Adolf Hitler made a lot of money. He got a lot of press. Certainly did have an effect on the world. He had an effect on the world that will never change. I mean, there's aspects of it. But I think it's best, always, to know these things. And when something comes out, I don't think it could ever happen again, because we have the internet and things like that. But in the old days, few people knew what Hitler was all about. And yet, he told us what he was interested in, what he wanted to do, and why he was angry. So let us never have that happen again. And always, if we see another Hitler coming up on the horizon, perhaps we need to do something about it.